Hey, everybody. Welcome. We're going to have yet another great late night conversation. I am so glad that all of you are here tonight. Yeah, let's go.
The American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
All right, everybody. So glad that you're here with us tonight. We're going to talk, like we always do, late night conversation about current events. I do want to remind you all that the way this works is first I give my opening remarks, which is about whatever I want to talk about. Then from there, we do a roll call to find out who is on the other side of the camera, who's watching out there in the universe. Then after that, I answer your questions. If you got something you would like me to talk about in the second half of the show, Rumble Rants, Cash App, the best way to do it is go to buymeacoffee.com/Caleb Maupin. That's the best way to send questions for the second half of the show. Now, as far as announcements, we are stepping up our anti-war activities. I cannot get into specifics because I don't want the U.S. government to ruin it. I don't want forces who don't agree with us to intervene and prevent us from doing some of the exciting things that we are planning to do. All I can say is we do need funds to carry it out. So if that is the case, I'm just going to share this message that I put out the other day. If you can give us a small one-time contribution or a large one-time contribution or a medium-sized one-time contribution, it would help. This is the appeal I put out earlier this week. Oh, hold on. That's not the appeal I put out later this week. This is the appeal that I put out this week, basically explaining our situation. So yeah, we're about to do some really exciting stuff. I can't get into specifics, but it's going to be good.
Emergency situation. This war on Iran took us all by surprise, and it's very dangerous. We have some important activities planned, but right now, the Center for Political Innovation really needs you to send a contribution. It's time to get into the streets and stop this war. I hope that you will consider sending us a small gift so that we can stand for peace in the streets of America.
Yes, Center for Political Innovation. We are doing it, and we have got a great plan for stuff to do in the next coming weeks. It's going to be quite exciting. So again, can't spill all the beans on here, but please send us a contribution. You can go to cpiusa.org and there's a donate button. Hit that donate button. We would really appreciate it. We're trying to figure out how to get everything in order and get people in from out of town. And oh goodness, things are in the works and I can't get into the specifics of it, but I think you should help us out. Anyway, on that note, just another reminder about how we do things. First, I give my opening remarks. Then from there, we do the roll call where I call you all out as I see you, names and locations. And then I answer your questions for the remainder of the show. So if there's something you would like me to talk about in the second half of the show, all I need you to do is go to Rumble. do a Rumble rant. You can cash at me at Caleb Maupin 22. But the absolute best way to do it is go to buymeacoffee.com/Caleb Maupin. Very quick, very easy. You can type as long as you want. It's just the best way to do it. All right, we're going to jump right into it. The situation now is quite unique in American history. I don't know if anyone's ever seen the South Park movie. You ever see the South Park movie? Matt Stone and Trey Parker, they did this cartoon that is still around that started when I was a kid. It was the obscene show on television that none of us were allowed to watch, but we heard about from our friends at school. And, it involved a lot of swearing, etc. And after a while, this sarcastic television show that had kind of a frat boy sense of humor, they made a film of it. And in the film, which I think it came out in 1999, if I'm not mistaken, the USA goes to war with Canada. And as the USA is sending troops in, there's a newscaster who's reporting on it. And, and he reports on it in the South Park movie as, oh, the USA is sending troops in. The world is calling for calm. But as usual, we're not listening. And it was portrayed as kind of a routine war, that there was this way of doing things in the 1990s, even going back to the 1980s. There was kind of routine U.S. humanitarian interventions, right, where the USA would accuse some government of something. Usually it turned out to be false afterwards. We'd be told that some leader of a country was a horrible dictator. Missiles would fly and it would be over very quickly. And that would be that. And I think Ronald Reagan's invasion of Grenada was one of these, prototype of this. The U.S. invasion of Panama certainly fit this parallel, this pattern. The bombing campaigns against Libya that Ronald Reagan launched, the bombing campaigns. I think there was a bombing of Lebanon, if I'm not mistaken. I think there may have been some U.S. military interventions in Lebanon in the 1980s. In the 90s, Bill Clinton bombed Somalia, the famous Black Hawk Down incident. Bill Clinton, there was the U.S. war in Iraq, the Gulf War. It was a very quick war. It was a couple weeks. Then there was the U.S. intervention in Sudan. Bill Clinton bombed Sudan a few times. There was the U.S. military intervention in Serbia, former Yugoslavia. And these wars tended to be, it was like they were flash wars almost. And, Obama attacked Libya in a similar manner. And they followed kind of a pattern where the United States would attack a country. The president would get on TV and tell us the country was so awful. It'd be like a surprise message from the president. There'd be a lot of lead up to it in the mainstream media in the United States. There'd be a lot of lead up to it, a lot of drum roll. They'd be accusing this government of atrocities, and the president would get on TV and he would usually give a speech that was something like, some people want us to be I'm sorry, I'll do Bill Clinton. Some people want us to be isolationists. That's not Bill Clinton. How can I do? Now, there are some people who want us to be isolationists. We can't do that. We've got to intervene. We got to protect the innocent people of Somal Iraq or Sudanbia. We got to protect them. They're under attack. America only helps people. We don't like to be the world's policeman. We got no choice. That's what we're going to do. Right? And these were the kind of wars that the U.S. waged, where very quickly there'd be a media campaign that would go on for a few days. Then there'd be a message from the president. Hello, my fellow Americans. I've decided we have to bomb. Or it would be Ronald Reagan. Hello, my fellow Americans. We've got to bomb. Or it would be, George W. Bush. Hello, my fellow Americans. Got to fight the terrorists, Al Qaeda, right? I don't know. It would be a quick war, right? And the USA would, unload a bunch of cruise missiles, attack a country. It would be over in a few hours. And then in the coming months, we would learn that it was all a lie. We would learn that, the Naria testimony, right, where they had the woman crying about the babies, the Iraqi soldiers, they're taking the babies. That turned out to be a lie. We'll learn that the situation in Panama was that U.S. troops had actually provoked the Panamanian troops on the border and provoked them to fire at them. We would learn that, we would learn that, what would we learn? We would learn that, that there was, not really a genocide going on in Serbia, that there were atrocities committed, but it's pretty clear that Milosevic was not committing genocide. And months later, all the facts and all the stuff we were told was urgent regarding the war would fall apart. And there would be hundreds of people, if not thousands of people, killed in the country. Often it led to regime change that led to people fleeing the country and a refugee crisis. And that's that. And generally that's what would occur. Now, the thing is that, the reason I'm talking about this is because the war that we're currently in, which Trump says is not a war, which Trump says he's already won, this is not ending anytime soon. It's wild. I saw that Trump was speaking at the Palm Beach Republican Club, and he said the war's already over, he's already won. Well, actually, there's reports of U.S. troops being amassed for a ground invasion of Iran. Now, that's absolutely insane. And if that were to indeed happen, we're going to have a huge bloodbath on our hands. But Trump is telling everyone it's already over. He's already won. And the Strait of Hormuz is blocked, and Trump is trying to clear the Strait of Hormuz. And he asked for help from the rest of the world, and the rest of the world told him, "You're on your own, buddy." Germany rebuffed him. European Union rebuffed him. We've got the whole world saying to Trump, no, right? Even people that support Israel, even people that generally agree with the standard U.S. narratives are saying this is completely crazy. We've got Joe Kent quitting the Trump administration and blowing the whistle about how this does not serve U.S. foreign policy interests even. This is just a gift for Israel. And then on top of that, we have, so many of Trump's supporters speaking up against this. And then we have Trump threatening to throw his own supporters in jail. Tucker Carlson is apparently under investigation by the FBI. They apparently are trying to prosecute him. The CIA is assembling a criminal complaint against Tucker Carlson because he's speaking up against the war. Joe Kent has been accused of allegedly mishandling or spreading classified information. They're trying to retaliate against him for quitting the administration over this. This is particularly wild, and never before have we had this kind of situation. This is a very, very, very unique situation. This is not one of those, flash wars. This is something like we've never seen. Now, when the USA invaded Iraq in 2003, that wasn't a quick war. That was a full-on invasion, and it had disastrous consequences for the world that just keep coming. I mean, it wasn't just thousands of U.S. troops dead. It wasn't just hundreds of thousands of Iraqis killed in the first few weeks and then millions made into refugees. It was the rise of ISIS. It was, right up to today, Iraq is suffering as a result of that conflict. But what is going on right now is wildly unpopular. U.S. public opinion is overwhelmingly opposed to this intervention, including almost, a big percentage, if not a majority, of Trump's supporters. It's not just Democrats who oppose it. It's a lot of Trump supporters who oppose it. So it's urgent. It is absolutely urgent that action be taken. And we need a real anti-war movement. And we don't have that right now. We don't have a real anti-war movement. And the Center for Political Innovation would like to build one. There's a couple things that we've learned to do as an organization. Now, we specialize in carrying out very kind of provocative demonstrations You know, we get very provocative signs, we get flags, and we've been doing this for years. I mean, I did this even when I was in the Workers' World Party. We did our rallies to support North Korea at the movie theaters, where we shocked people with Kim Il-sung flags. We shocked people with North Korean flags. You know, we have kind of a style that we use with our big provocative signs that we use, you know, where we set up and we go places, and, you know, we tend to occupy a corner unannounced and just kind of show up and have these kind of flash rallies that people are not anticipating, that are very in your face and provocative. And, you know, we have our own style that we do. And we did it with the Trump Kim banner, right? You saw us with our Only Peace Can Make America Great Again, our Peace MAGA operation during the election campaign. You know, we have a unique way of operating and intervening. And it's something that we're quite good at. We're now taking it to another level. We are going to intervene in a way we have not intervened yet, which is a little bit, I mean, it's kind of riskier. I mean, it's kind of similar to something we did once before, but we're doing it on another level, right? I don't think we're going to get arrested. I think it's legal. It's pretty much legal what we're doing. I mean, I don't think it's illegal in any real way. I mean, you know, who knows? I mean, you know, in, you know, city ordinances, they can say disturbing the peace or whatever. But for the most part, you know, we're complying with U.S. law overwhelmingly. We're not, you know, this isn't a civil disobedience or anything like that. But we have a plan to create a bigger ruckus than we generally have done in the past. And I'm quite excited about this plan. I mean, we'll see. We will see. We'll see how it goes. It ain't over till it's over, as they say. You know, but logistically, again, we're constantly, as an organization, engaging in what's the term? The Freudian term for it, right? Was it ego development or ego development? We're constantly engaging in ego development. We are figuring out how big we are and what we are able to pull off with the resources that we have, with the equipment that we have, with the membership that we have. We are constantly kind of figuring out how to cross the I's and dot the T's and pull off interventions. And we'll see. We have an interesting plan to put into effect. And again, not breaking the law, certainly not being violent or anything like that. Obviously, we're not gonna break the law, and we're not going to, you know, do anything that would, you know, harm anybody or anything like that. But we are going to figure out how to intervene effectively with an anti-war message. And I'm excited about this on some level. I'm excited about it, but it presents a challenge. It really does. And yeah, we're just going to have to do it. And you know, CPI, we do really important work in terms of our support for the Uhuru movement. You know, we were out there with Chairman O'Malley. We were out there, you know, we raised their case at the United Nations. We raised their case in Russia. We had many hands-off Uhuru demonstrations. You know, we have done a lot. And the Peace MAGA campaign, and distributing the Houthi book across America, distributing the Kamala Harris book. I mean, I could list everything that CPI has done. We have a very, very strong ability to intervene. And on top of that, we're getting better at intervening. And that's the point of building an anti-imperialist organization. Look, I've heard the stories of what people did. This is a story that I heard from Frances, of all people. You know, the woman who recruited me into the Workers' World Party was named Frances Dostal. She was born in 1928. And when she was learning to be a nurse, she was in nursing school, the Korean War was happening. And at that time, it was the height of McCarthyism in America. And her family was in the Communist Party. She had never been a member of the Communist Party. She she had been in the Young Pioneers Club, and then, in the when she was finally old enough to join the Young Communist League, they changed its name to American Youth for Democracy. That was part of the Popular Front. And she went to a lot of American Youth for Democracy events, but it didn't really fit in with it. It wasn't really her thing. And then when McCarthyism set in, the Communist Party was forced underground and such. And she was in nursing school in New York City in the 1950s, and in 1950, I believe, when World War I was happening, when the Korean War was happening. And she told me the story of how during the Korean War, there was one anti-war demonstration. And, at the time, the USA had a booming economy in the 1950s. McCarthyism was in full effect. The Communist Party was forced underground. And somebody that she went to nursing school with, who was also around the Communist Party, said to her, be in Times Square in New York City at such and such a time. Come to Times Square at such and such a time. And I can't tell you any more. I can't give you any more information. Just be there. So she went there. She was in Times Square, and she saw a bunch of guys in suits and ties. And they were just standing around, just standing there, minding their own business. People were wondering what these guys doing. And once enough of these guys in suits had assembled, somebody shouted a code word. And when they shouted this code word, they unfurled a banner that said, U.S. out of the Korean Peninsula. And they unfurled this banner, U.S. out of the Korean Peninsula. And they began agitating on the streets of Times Square. And almost immediately, the police came and attacked them with batons. And so they shouted another code word, and they rolled up the banner, and they got out of there. And then they met up in Madison Square, right? Down on 34th Street, 10 blocks down the avenue, actually 8 blocks down, 10 blocks, 8 blocks down Broadway. They assembled, same thing. A group of guys in suits, just standing around. No one knew what they were about. No one knew what they were doing. And then somebody shouted a code word, and then they unfurled a big, huge banner, U.S. out of the Korean Peninsula, and the police attacked them and came down on them. And so they broke apart, reassembled 23rd Street. I don't even remember, what is 23rd Street? Which square is that? The square on 23rd Street. I don't even remember what square that is. They went down to 23rd Street, did the same thing. They went down to Union Square, did the same thing. They went all the way down to Foley Square in Lower Manhattan. And a couple people got arrested at every street, but they just kept going. And there was no internet back then. And it was their way of stopping the Korean War, or trying to intervene in opposition to the U.S. Attack on the Korean Peninsula that was killing millions of people. It was quite a heroic thing. And she described, this one demonstration. There was only one demonstration against the Korean War. And I read about that demonstration later in William Z. Foster, his History of the Communist Party of the United States. He talked about how there was one demonstration against the Korean War organized by the Young Communist League. They did it. She had been there. She described it. She wasn't really a participant. She just kind of watched. But that was her experience. Now, there's a book called Being Read by Howard Fast. Howard Fast is a novelist. He wrote Spartacus, the novel. He wrote Freedom Road, the novel. And he wrote kind of an autobiography or a memoir of his time in the Communist Party, which I have a copy of here somewhere. And I've actually read it out loud on the streams. I'm not going to do that tonight. But he wrote an autobiography about his time in the Communist Party. And in how during the Korean War, they recorded an album of a speech against the Korean War. And they got this album, this record, a vinyl record album, and they rented a hotel room with cash near Times Square. And they mounted up speakers in the window of the hotel room, and they rigged up the vinyl record, and they glued the door to the hotel room shut, and they had it on a timer, and suddenly an anti-war speech blasted through Times Square over speakers. And for a good 20 minutes, this anti-war speech played on loop, condemning U.S. imperialism, condemning McCarthyism, and standing with the Korean people in Times Square. And eventually the police broke open the door to the hotel room and turned off the speakers. But that was how they were able to do it. And that McCarthyism in America, it was illegal to be a communist. It was illegal to, offer support for the Korean people, but it was something that they could do. And so they had these speakers blasting this anti-war message across Times Square, and that was some of what they were able to do. So you hear about that, right? And this was in a time where public opinion was overwhelmingly in favor of the Korean War. People didn't want communism to expand. They believed what these new exciting things called televisions were telling them about the evils of communism or whatever. But yet they were able to intervene and very, very effectively oppose the Korean War. Very, very interesting. I mean, they were able to do something. I mean, they didn't stop the Korean War by any means, but they were able to get the message out there. And so you can read Howard Fast's memoir, Being Read, or I heard the story from Francis about the one demonstration. It's vaguely mentioned in one of William Z. Foster's histories about opposing the Korean War. But I hear other things. One story that I heard is 1964. The World's Fair was held in Queens, right? And the World's Fair was a big display of American consumerism that was held in Queens. And it was the USA basically telling the Soviet Union that they were no good because America has so many TVs and so many refrigerators. It was just this big consumerism display that went on in Queens, New York. It was just a big kind of carnival with all these displays about American consumerism and American consumer goods, but they also let other countries have booths, right? The World's Fair, you can read about it. It was a thing they used to do, the World's Fair, right? The World's Fair, right? Or the Universal Exhibition. It was a thing they did. And in 1964, they did it in Queens, New York. And that was just after Khrushchev had, was running the Soviet Union. And that was when the Cold War was going on, and it was a way to demonize the Soviet Union, to promote American consumerism. It was very ideological, and I believe at another World's Fair there was a debate between Richard Nixon and Khrushchev about capitalism versus communism that took place, if I remember correctly. But anyway, and I heard about in 1964 at the World's Fair, they put it on. There were communists that knew that the World's Fair was about promoting U.S. imperialism, and they knew that it was about trying to demonize the Soviet Union. They knew that it was not good, and they did a couple things. First of all, they found out that no black people had been hired to work on the World's Fair. The construction unions that ran construction work in New York City were racist, the crafts unions, and they did not allow any black people to work on the construction of it. So the Communist Party and the Progressive Labor Party and the Workers' World Party and the Socialist Workers' Party went to the Congress for Racial Equality, which was a black radical organization, which is still around, but is actually now quite conservative, but it was quite radical back then. They approached them and they said, we'd like to organize some protests. And so on the day that the World's Fair opened, all these people were coming to Queens by subway. And on the day the World's Fair was set to open, all these communists went into the subways of New York City. They held the doors open. And for hours, people couldn't get into the World's Fair because communists were holding the subway doors open and preventing the train cars from getting to the World's Fair. Now, that is a crime nowadays. You do something like that. They've actually passed laws about transportation. And Occupy Wall Street did something like that a while back, if I remember. And there was actually like a federal probe into it. But that back then, I guess they didn't take stuff like that as seriously, and they held the doors of the subways open. And for hours, no one could get into the World's Fair because these communists were holding the subway doors open, and police ran into the subways and beat up and arrested the communist organizers. But it was a very well coordinated disruption of the World's Fair in Queens, New York in 1964 to support the Soviet Union. And people got injured and people got arrested. It was a very effective intervention pulled off by the communist groups and also by the Congress of Racial Equality and some of the black activist groups in New York City. And so these are the things that people can do, right? I mean, there's a whole history of that. As the Vietnam War got going, there were what they called the peace parades, where the Communist Party and the Democratic Party would have these parades, these like liberal parades that weren't really against the Vietnam War. They were just kind of saying Republicans are bad and we need less nuclear weapons and, whatever. And, there were groups that disrupted those peace parades. And they waved Vietnamese flags and they disrupted the peace parades very effectively. There's a lot that people can do. There's a lot that people have done over the years to oppose war. And you have to be creative about it, right? And you have to see what you've got, right? If you're able to mobilize hundreds of thousands of people, obviously that is what you should be doing. But if you're not in a position to organize hundreds of thousands of people, what can you do? What can you do to oppose war? How can you make it so there's no business as usual? Now, one thing that absolutely must be highlighted, and then we are planning to highlight this as CPI, is that the Democrats could stop this war, but they won't. The Democrats are talking against this war because public opinion is against this war. However, the Democrats are not stopping this war. They could have voted to tie Trump's hands. They didn't. They even pushed the vote back a day to make sure the war started before any potential vote. And then they voted down Thomas Massey's resolution that would have tied Trump's hands. The Democrats could cut off the funding for this war at any time. Right now, Trump is asking for another $200 billion for this war. Again, they could cut off the funding. The Democrats could stop this war, and they are not stopping this war, though they're trying to bank off anti-war sentiment for their political gain. And that needs to be exposed. That absolutely needs to be exposed. There's plenty of exposing Trump, right? Look, he said no new wars, and he lied. And I'm glad that Joe Kent and Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massey are exposing Trump. But the fact that the Democrats are now demagogically talking against this war when not stopping it, right? As Kinkle is pointing out in the chat, the Democrats all gave a standing ovation to Trump when he was talking all the lies about attacking Iran during the State of the Union. That needs to be highlighted. The Democrats could stop this war, and they're not stopping it. That is urgent. That is urgent. That needs to be included. That message needs to be everywhere. Because the Democrats want to gain from the anti-war sentiment, but they don't actually want to act. They are bought and paid for by the Israel lobby. Kamala Harris's husband is an AIPAC lobbyist. They have no problem with wars and interventions, as long as Trump isn't the one doing it. But if they were serious, they could stop this war, and that needs to come up, right? We should call out Trump for lying and betraying his base, and there's plenty of that going on, and we will do it as well. But we also need to be talking about how, even though the public is overwhelmingly against this war, and even though the Democrats, they have the seats in Congress, if they were to team up with the Republicans that are against this war, they could easily stop this war. And they're not doing it. They're not doing it. They are not really against this war. They are just against Donald Trump. They want power. And that should be highlighted as well. And we've got some exciting plans in the works, some very, very, very exciting plans in the works. So I am doing my best. I'm a little bit stressed out. Today, I had to, calm down a little bit because, I'm being pulled in about 12 different directions right now. I don't want to get into specifics, but There are circumstances in my life that are making it a little more stressful for me to do this kind of thing. But I'm trying to do the best I can under the circumstances that I am in. We have got to find a way to intervene, and we've got to stop this war, and we got to step up our game. We did a great action on February 28th, the day that Khamenei was murdered. We were in the streets of New York City saying, stop the war. We were out in the streets for like 5 hours. It was a very long demonstration that we did in the streets of New York City on February 28th. And we had members. Our members were out in LA. Our members were in Minneapolis. Our members were in Chicago. I mean, 8 different cities, we had people saying no to the war. Well, it looks like we've got something coming up. And, what's making it stressful for me is finance. I'll just be honest, right? That, these things cost money, and, getting people in the right place at the right time to do what needs to be done is not cheap. And I'm actually a bit stressed about the financial aspect of all of this. That's why we made the special funding appeal. But today I took a walk. I woke up this morning quite stressed out. I'll just be honest about getting everything done, about how urgently we need to take action, and about how stressed out I am about figuring out how we can take the action that needs to be taken. But I woke up this morning, and I was a bit stressed out, but I went into the city, I did my job, and then I was in a certain place, and that place is very key to what we're going to do. I wasn't even planning to be there. It's just kind of random. I ended up in that place, and I started walking through a certain part of town. I can't tell you where it was. And it suddenly occurred to me how we could very, 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 very effectively intervene. And I can't get into the specifics here. You'll all see afterwards what we're planning to do. It's a little risky, but it's not illegal, and it's not violent. And I developed a plan. For us to intervene to stop the war, to get an anti-war message to a lot of people at a place that it really needs to be heard, to an audience that'll be very receptive of it, but needs to hear the Democrats' part of it. The Democrats could stop this war. And I think that we can have a really, really big impact coming up. And I can't get into the specifics, but I can tell you, I really need y'all to send donations. That would make my life a lot easier. If you don't want to do it, I understand. I'm talking vague here, and who knows? Sometimes you try to do these kind of things and they don't work out, right? But I have a feeling, based on what I came to understand about where I was today, that we're going to be doing something very effective. So yeah, that's what I can say. We urgently need a movement to stop this war. Look, if we've learned anything in the last 2 years, 3 years, it's that there are no shortcuts. All right. It's not enough that public opinion is against this war. Public opinion is solidly against this war, and it's still happening. It's not enough that prominent social media personalities are against this war. Tucker Carlson's against this war. Candace Owen is against this war. All the liberals are against this war. Young Turds is against this war. The Hassan Pikers against this war. Everyone who's anybody in the political internet is against this war. There's very, very few people, other than like Laura Loomer, that are on the internet opposing this war. We got public opinion on our side. We got social media on our side. This war is still happening. Why? Because we don't have a movement. What's the only thing that's ever changed things, folks? It's been movements. We need to build a movement. And we've known this all along as CPI. We've known this, but we haven't really known it. But there are so many things that we know as CPI that it's like we know them and they're just a fact that we know, but then lately they've just been smacking us in the face. Look, Trump got elected promising no new wars. And we boosted that message during the campaign, which was very effective and was very, very important. And look where we are. Look, we have to build a mass movement to oppose this war. There is no alternative. There's nothing else that we can do. We have to build a mass movement to oppose this war. you know, I mean, if we don't do that, it doesn't matter that social media is with us, doesn't matter that public opinion is with us. It doesn't matter, right? And I'm looking at it, and I woke up this morning a bit stressed out about how are we going to get everything where we need it to go, and how are we going to do what we need to do, but then my job took me to one part of town, and that was right next to another part of town, and then I walked through this part of town, and I saw where this was, and I saw where that was, and I guess I can't get into specifics. I really wish I could get into specifics with you all, but then that would blow the game now, wouldn't it? That would enable forces that are probably watching right now to figure out how to prevent us from doing what we want to do. And I thought, so we can do blank, and then we can do blank, and then we can do blank, and that is going to have a huge impact. And I developed a plan. And I'm very excited about this plan. I'm very, very excited about this plan, but we need your support. We absolutely need your support, so that I don't, completely stress out about how to pull this off. We got some people coming to town already, that are coming into town. Those people that are coming into town, they need a place to stay. We're trying to figure that out, but if you could take that, off my chest, that would be great. If we had a little bit more money for that, that'd be great. We've got some equipment. We've already got a nice big sign, Iran is not our enemy, but we need some other stuff. There's some details here. Again, I can't get into the specifics. We need your support. I think we can pull this off. Shout out to Irving, CPI member here locally. He's been helping out. Shout out to Noah in Boston. Noah is amazing. He's always doing stuff. Shout out to the people that are coming from out of town. Oh boy. We are just going to do the best we can to get an anti-war message to a place where it'll really count. And I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, what more is there to say, really? That's what we're going to do. And we're going to do it well. And that's really all there is to say. So, what else can we do? I look at the situation that we're in globally. And I see this completely spinning out of control. We talked on a recent stream about how China is a target. It appears, and they're trying to get oil leverage over China. I talked on a recent stream about the breakdown of the Western economy and the desperation that they're in. There's a lot of aspects of this that we can get into, but we really just need to get into the fact that we urgently need a movement to oppose all of this. And I think we can build one. I really, really do. So yeah. And he's been saying that, but then it looks like they're amassing troops for an invasion. It looks like there's a ground invasion being prepared. I saw that, and that would be nice. But the other thing is Iran can't not shoot back. And that's the crazy thing. Iran showed so much restraint. They murdered Qasem Soleimani, and they behaved with restraint. But at this point, you kill their supreme leader. You kill so many of their top government officials. In order for the Iranian government to maintain any credibility as a government, they're going to have to, they say there's a policy of no restraint at this point. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know quite what to say. I do want to mention one thing that's important to talk about. So Kirill Dmitriev, who is negotiating with the United States regarding the war in Ukraine, he's representative of Russia, who I have actually met, right? You've seen, here's the picture of me and Kirill Dmitriev. I'm somebody who actually knows what I'm talking about. I was with him when he came to New York City, right? Hold on. Do I have the picture here of me and Kirill Dmitriev? Where is it? But I was with him when he came to New York City, so I'm not just somebody speculating about this. I I know what I'm talking about. But Kirill Dmitriev called out the Wall Street Journal today for fake news. So the Wall Street Journal today wrote a story, one of these stories that is completely just one of these stories that, oh, take our word for it. Take our word for it. But according to people familiar with the matter, according to somebody who talked to somebody, and we don't really know who that is, they're claiming that Russia offered to stop sharing military intelligence with Iran if the United States would stop sharing military intelligence with Ukraine. Right? So they're saying Iran, Russia was going to sell out Iran and stop helping them in this war if the USA would stop helping Ukraine. And Kirill Dmitriev spoke up and he said, that's bull honky. Fake news. It is not true. It is not conceivably true. And it's not true. If Russia were to sell Iran out, that would be ridiculous. And they're not going to. Russia has given Iran a whole bunch of missiles. Russia and Iran are very close. I've been to Russia and I've been to Iran and I've seen how close they are. And no, again, the reason that Russia is at war in Ukraine to begin with is because they stand by their people. Something about, a difference between the East and the West, right? Not a lot of people have pointed this out. This is on a personal level as well as an international level. But, in the West, we become friends quickly, but we don't have loyalty to our friends, right? You start a new job, somebody's fun to talk to, you might become their friend very quickly, but you don't stand by them. You throw them under the bus if necessary. It's like, okay, he's fun to talk to. That's kind of a Western way of being, is that we make friends very, very quickly, but then we don't really have loyalty to our friends. In the East, it's quite different. In the East, it takes them a long time to really trust you. It takes them a long time to really become your friend. But when they become your friend, it's for real. And you don't stab your friend in the back. And that's why it takes so long to become your friend, because the obligation, that in America, unfortunately, we have a culture now where people are almost expected to throw their friends under the bus. That's part of cancel culture. Is you're expected, if your friend is accused of being a bad person or accused of being a Trump supporter or whatever, you're supposed to throw them under the bus, or else, you're a bad person yourself, right? But in the East, somebody who doesn't stand by their friends is considered not a good person, even if their friend is flawed, even if their friend doesn't do well, or their friend makes mistakes, right? One who stabs his friends in the back is viewed as a bad person, much more so in the East than in the West. Here in the West, it's more like, well, as long as you have principles or whatever, if you throw your friends under the bus, it's almost considered a heroic thing or something like that. It's not like that in the East. It's a traditional thing, right? And it's funny because I grew up in a small town in Ohio where my family were the most liberal family in the town, practically, right? I mean, my mom's a librarian, my dad was a professional environmentalist, and we were like the only Democrats that I knew of. And so we were quite liberal, but I've come to terms with the fact that I'm a very traditional person in a lot of ways. I'm very conservative. I'm a very conservative person, not economically speaking, not politically speaking exactly, but just in the way I view things. I'm conservative. I have some of those values that are very, very well alive in the East that we in the West are just losing more and more every day. One of them is that one stands by one's relatives, one stands by one's friends, one's longtime friends, one's real friends. A great example was this. When I was a senior in high school, there was somebody that was in my class. And he was, I'm not talking about myself because I got awful grades in high school. This guy was a valedictorian actually. He ended up being a valedictorian in my high school, got a very, very good academic record. And he was, he was kind of what you might call a nerd, right? He was into video games. Again, not talking about myself because I don't play video games. He was into video games, and he was a little bit, he was bookish, socially awkward. You might call him a nerd. And there was a misunderstanding one day in the cafeteria where he took a plastic knife and he pointed it at somebody in a joke. Not an actual physical knife, but like a plastic knife, and he pointed it at somebody. And this is, in the age of zero tolerance and all of this. And it turned into a big to-do. It turned into a big hoo-ha and all of this. And I mean, he almost got suspended. He almost got, they almost messed up his 4.0 status and his valedictorian thing. It was a whole big disaster. And I looked at the whole thing and thought, this is such an injustice because he didn't do anything. He made a passing comment in jest. And that I also was disgusted by the teacher who, quote unquote, turned him in, who didn't even witness it, but heard about it from somebody who heard about it from somebody. And then he decided that he was going to be a big hero, right? And like he kept walking around as if he was, some kind of detective or something. Yes, I turned him in. Yes. And it's like, give me a break. But I'm sure that guy still to this day thinks he saved humanity from a school shooting or something. It was so ridiculous. And I was disgusted by the whole situation. This guy was a friend of mine. On top of that, I was disgusted by the teacher who turned him in, even though he didn't witness the incident, even though nothing had really happened, even though, and the way the guy just, was like doing a victory lap about having turned in this 4.0 student for jokingly pointing a plastic knife at another student. I just thought that whole thing was dumb. I mean, sure, don't point a plastic knife, be smarter than that, but whatever. But anyway, the thing that disgusted me the most, the only reason I even remember this situation, because honestly it's just a little meaningless incident, honestly, and he didn't end up getting kicked out of school. He ended up still being a valedictorian and all of that. So it's a meaningless incident that just deserves to be just kind of forgotten. The only reason it sticks with me is because of the fact that this kid's brother, sibling, member of his household, blood of his blood, reacted to this situation awfully. And I remember seeing this friend of mine's brother walking about the school, laughing about the situation, talking about my brother's a terrorist, my brother's a shooter, he's going to kill us all, And I'm watching this, and I guess the sibling rivalry between the two of them must have been very intense. And I don't want to get into this person's personal life, but I watched this in horror, thinking this is your own brother. You don't. It's one thing if you don't get along with him and all that, but when your own brother is in a situation where he's facing potential legal consequences and all of that, one should not side, at least publicly, or even if one resents the brother and is angry with the brother, one should not, you should at least display family loyalty in public. And I saw that and I was like, what is wrong with this person? And it wasn't rational. And at the time I questioned it. I'm like, why am I so disgusted by his brother taking delight in my friend's legal difficulty? And I realized that deep in my bones, I had this kind of conservatism that one should stand by their family member. One should stand by their friends. I just had this deep belief, right? And I guess that makes me conservative in a way. I don't throw my friends under the bus. I don't, right? And it's actually a weird thing about me. I've had friends in my life who probably deserved to be thrown under the bus, but I didn't throw them under the bus. And, I get on here and complain about the political party I used to be a member of. I tried to leave in peace. I really, 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 and I could tell the story, which I won't repeat. I really, really, really tried to leave on good terms. I really tried to just say, I'm going to do something else. And they just made that impossible for me. You know, but I am generally a loyal person. I don't like to burn bridges. I don't like to defame people. I don't like to cut off friendships. Right. And that I see a value in that. I see a value in that. And I guess maybe that's why when I see other people act differently, when I see them celebrating their own brother's prosecution or whatever, or I see them, you know, throwing their friend under the bus, it angers me so much because I very, very much see loyalty as an attribute that is important. Now, it's interesting. They tell us that Donald Trump is like that. I think that's some apprenticeship. What is it? The Apprentice. I think that's some TV shit. I don't think that's real because you'll notice that Trump throws his own people under the bus nonstop, right? I mean, you know, Trump's first term in office, right? He threw Sean Spicer under the bus. I mean, he was constantly throwing people under the bus. You know, they tell us Trump's a good negotiator. No, he's not. I mean, no one's ever going to negotiate with America. If while you're negotiating, you're bombed. They did that twice. Iran was negotiating last June. He bombed them during the negotiations. Israel sneak attacked them, and then the USA was in on it last June. Iran was negotiating this time, and then they sneak attacked. I mean, that I don't think Trump's a good negotiator. He didn't write The Art of the Deal. It had a ghostwriter. Somebody else wrote it. Somebody else wrote The Art of the Deal. And it seems like Trump has this reputation as being a good negotiator. He's not. Trump also has this reputation of valuing loyalty and sticking by his friends. I don't think that's the case. You know, I don't think that. I mean, he betrayed almost all of his voters. Let's remember. He betrayed almost all of his voters who wanted him to win on the basis of opposing war. It looks like he's sending the FBI after Tucker Carlson. I don't see Trump as being this great negotiator, and I don't see him as being loyal to his friends. I just don't see it. I do not see it. But anyhow, we need an anti-war movement in this country. We urgently need an anti-war movement in this country. We have a plan to do something. I mean, it's not going to change the course of human history dramatically, but you never know, right? Butterfly effect, right? You never say that, right? You know, it's the whole butterfly effect thing. But I thought of something that we can do, and that so much of what CPI is all about is seeing what we can do with what we've got. And once we see what we can do with what we've got, we do it. Now, I did want to show you a couple clips. Joe Kent, who opposes this war, he is, I mean, what do they say? He's singing like a choir boy. He is telling it like it is. And so I wanted to show you a couple clips of Joe Kent before we start taking questions. Because Joe Kent is saying some pretty bold and important things that need to be said. So let me pull up a couple of Joe Kent's dramatic statements that need to be said. There's another thing I wanted to talk about as well. I just wanted to touch on. So here's Joe Kent. He was with Megyn Kelly. This is some of what he's saying. I mean, this guy was on the inside. This was the director of counterterrorism for the United States. Keep in mind, right? And they call Iran a state sponsor of terrorism. This guy, if there's anyone who's qualified to say we're not in danger of terrorism from Iran, it's this guy. It's this guy. So yeah, this is Joe Kent with Megyn Kelly. This is a clip of Joe Kent speaking with Megyn Kelly.
There's been a lot of pushback on, should you have written the letter? Should you have been so public with your reasoning, critical of the president? We could go with a number of different commentators, but there's a guy, former DOD, Ezra Cohen, online, who put it pretty succinctly. He writes as follows. As a political appointee, if you disagree with the president, you have a duty to vigorously argue your point in private. Once the commander-in-chief makes his decision, salute and move out. If you cannot execute the decision, you must resign and do so silently. Respect the weight of the president's responsibility, which was given to him by the people. Do not undermine his ability to carry out his responsibility as commander-in-chief. I've heard a lot of vets say that, that you have an obligation not to undermine the commander-in-chief in the middle of a war that has now begun, and that's what the problem they have with your letter, even if they do share your sentiments about the actual war.
I totally understand where they're coming from, and for many years, I felt the exact same way. But again, look, 20 plus years of veterans knowing better and being quiet because we're good soldiers, that got us to this point.
I mean, yeah. I mean, he's not resigning over a personal disagreement. He's resigning over the fact that we're being marched into a war that is not to our benefit. He's resigning over the fact that we are in very, very big danger. But here's another clip of Joe Kent.
You probably have been reading the news. You were inside the administration also at this time. You did have a very high level security clearance. Do you think that Jeffrey Epstein was an intelligence asset?
Yeah, I do. That's my opinion. The NCTC, we never touched any of the Epstein stuff. That was all under DOJ, lock and key. So I don't really have any insider knowledge beyond what I've read personally, the same stuff you've read on the internet. But yeah, to some degree. Now, was he, a freebooter, a privateer who occasionally would do contract work with different intelligence agencies? That's just my opinion. That's kind of the realm that he was in. But there's obviously something much darker there. There's something else that speaks to just the power dynamics in our world. I think that's in those files. And, I think we should continue to question everything about those files, and we should demand that our government actually gives us transparency.
Yeah, so that's him talking about the Epstein files there, and how it's pretty clear that Epstein was some kind of intelligence operative. Now, Joe Kent also says that it seems pretty clear that that Charlie Kirk was opposing war with Iran, and that they were prevented from thoroughly investigating the death of Charlie Kirk. This is all, we're in unprecedented territory. I remember when conspiracy theories and, talk about that, the age of the Kennedy assassination, this is on such a different level. But the other thing I wanted to touch on before we start doing questions and such is, so I don't know if you saw this, but they're going to sue Harvard University because Harvard students protested Israel murdering tens of thousands of Palestinians. This is the Department of Justice, not just anybody. The Department of Justice is filing a legal suit against Harvard University because students there disagreed with Israel.
Hi, I'm here to tell you about an important federal civil rights lawsuit that the United States Department of Justice filed today against Harvard University for tolerating significant and onerous racial and ethnic abuse against Israeli and Jewish students on the campus in the wake of the horrific Hamas attack in Israel on October 7th, 2023. Harvard allowed pro-Palestinian protests to take over the campus, but importantly, that included these people blocking visibly Jewish and Israeli students from being able to get to their classes. Now, Harvard has rules about how students should conduct themselves, but it relaxed those rules when it came to these particular protesters. So every American...
So wait a second. I'm going to stop it right there. Right. So this is the U.S. Department of Justice, the federal government civil rights division, is going after Harvard because students were protesting. And they are claiming that protesters blocked Jewish and Israeli students from going to class solely because they were Jewish. So you're telling me the protesters were standing in front of the building and they were standing there going, "Are you a Jew? Oh, go in. Oh, are you a Jew? Go in. Go in. Oh, you're Jewish? Nope, you can't go in. No Jews allowed in this building. Are you serious?" Why is there no video of this? I want to see the video of this, right? So the students at Harvard who were protesting, many of whom were Jewish, by the way, the overwhelming majority of white students at Harvard are Jewish. So if there were any white people at these protests, they were probably Jewish, right? And, leftist groups, socialist and communist groups tend to be overwhelmingly Jewish. And Harvard itself, you have very few non-Jewish white people at Harvard. So you're telling me these protesters stood in front of the buildings at Harvard and people were going to their class and they said, all right, are you a Jew? Oh, he can go. He can go. Oh, nope, I got a Jew here. Nope, he can't go. An Israeli. Nope, he can't go to class. That didn't happen. That is one of the stupidest claims. That is so far-fetched and absurd. I don't know where to begin. So that I can guarantee you that not only did that not happen, but like no one of those protesters would ever even think of doing such a thing. That is, anyway, let her continue.
That takes federal funding must comply with federal law, including in this case, Title VI. The United States Department of Justice Civil Rights Division will not allow any particular category of students in our country to be discriminated against, taunted, or otherwise harassed in this
So you're not allowed to disagree. That's all that happened at Harvard. People who didn't agree. And what about the doxing truck that was driving around Harvard with the faces of all the students that had signed a petition against Israel? Is that not taunting? Is that not harassment? You're being victimized if people disagree with you.
That Harvard tolerated. The record is clear. We look forward to litigating this case, and we look forward to making sure that every recipient of federal funding in the university systems complies with our federal civil rights laws. So stay tuned for more developments in this case.
There you go. That is so absurd. That is such a waste of government money. And it is, that is beyond idiotic on levels I can't even begin to fathom. But I don't know what to say. I made the analogy the other night about the Mau Mau revolt in Kenya. And the Mau Mau revolt in Kenya was where you had an uprising among the Kenyan people, and you had the British military trying to strategically carry out counterinsurgency operations. And then you had the white settlers forming their own militias and, going out and doing things on their own because they thought the British military wasn't brutal enough. And then the British military having to try and block them in order to carry out their strategy. And that what we've got right now in America is we got a situation where the US was trying to fight Iran in their own strategic way. And Israel was mad because it wasn't in their short-term interest. And Israel hijacked US foreign policy and is now forcing the United States is forcing a confrontation with Iran that is not ultimately in the strategic interest of the United States. It's just to the short-term benefit of Israel. And that is, that's what's going on. And it's crazy and it's silly and it's dumb and it's, I don't know what else do you want to call it? It's batty. It's stupido. I don't know. It's crazy. And the implications are going to be that, look, it is our job. If we're anti-imperialists, we need to oppose this war. And we've got a strategy for what we're going to do as CPI. And I think it will have a significant impact. Sometimes you're in the right place at the right time, kind of like what Dan did. You all remember what Dan did? Dan, leader of CPI LA, regional captain for California. They're out there every weekend. They're going to be out there tomorrow, I'm sure, in the streets of Los Angeles somewhere opposing the war, and good for them. But they just happened to be, in LA opposing the war, and they got featured in a DSA comedic video. I don't know if y'all saw it. About the Holy War, right? Because they were there at the right place, right? And if you just go there and do things and you're in the right place, sometimes things can really play out in your favor. But regardless, we just have to go out there. So, we've got a plan. I've now got a very, very clear image of what it is that we're going to do pretty soon. And I've called up and spoken to a few members about our plan. And we got people coming in from out of town. And it looks like we're going to be able to do something. And try to make a difference. What else can we do? What else can we do? So on that note, folks, names and locations. I will call you all out as I see you. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Who is with us? Names and locations. Who is with us? Roll call time. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. We got Bendigo, Australia, David Fox. Good to see you. Names and locations. Who is with us? Names and locations. Who is with us? Ryan in Kansas City is here. Pensacola, Florida. Jacob Hempcar in Wisconsin. Lawrence Johnson in Chicago. Jenny in Cincinnati. John in Florida. Jim in Chicago. David in Los Angeles. Good to see you all. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Who is with us? Tonight? Names and locations. Who is with us? Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Brian in Venice, Florida. Stamford, Connecticut. Not Stratford. Stratford-on-Avon's where Shakespeare comes from. Stamford, Connecticut. Sebastian in Stamford, Connecticut. Brian in Venice, Florida. Hey, David. Very, very good. Names and locations, folks. Names and locations. Who is with us? Names and locations. Scott in Pennsylvania. Good to see you, Scott. Good to see you. Names and locations. Who is with us? Names and locations. Who is with us? Anybody else? Well, listen, folks, I have been on the radio lately. I went on WBAI radio this afternoon. I do regular interviews on WBAI. Rebecca Miles is the host of Frontline Voices, which is their noon program. And I go on WBAI very regularly. They have tens of thousands of listeners. It's not the biggest radio station, but New York City is a very densely populated area, and they have quite an audience. So I went on WBAI today. I'm going to put that interview on. But anyway, if any of you all have questions, one person sent a buy me a coffee, and I appreciate that. But yeah, if you have any questions for me to answer, go to buymeacoffee.com. I will answer them. I like answering people's questions. So go to buymeacoffee.com. Send me questions. You can do Rumble rants. Cash at me at Caleb Maupin 22. Anyway, this was my interview on WBAI radio this afternoon. So there we go. Here we go.
Joining us now is Caleb Maupin, journalist and political analyst on the ongoing aggression waged by Israel and the US against Iran and the latest on Cuba. Welcome to the show, Caleb.
Sure. Glad to be here as always.
So let's start with Iran, if we could, with the US calling for a $200 billion supplemental military funding request, perhaps signaling how long the administration expects the war with Iran to last. What do you make of that latest request in the context of what the growing debt, the $1 trillion debt of the U.S., and generally the economy?
Well, if you look at the resignation of Joe Kent, on top of that, the number of people within Trump's camp that are not approving of the idea of expanding this war. I mean, you have a number of people that are Trump supporters that are opposing this right out, including Tucker Carlson, the host who campaigned for him on the campaign trail. He says he's now facing a possible criminal probe, could be charged. Apparently, he's under investigation. We have Joe Kent, the U.S. director of the National Anti-Terrorism Counterterrorism Center, who resigned in protest. You have a very mild statement from Tulsi Gabbard, a very, very mild statement that just kind of says, well, Trump has the authority to do this if he determines a threat. And on top of that, we have other figures within the Congress that are supporting the action, but are realizing that almost to save their credibility, they have to oppose expanding it. We've seen Nancy Mace make some statements, for example, right? Whereas while she's supporting Trump's attack on Iran, she doesn't support expanding it. And it looks like the whole operation is falling apart at this point. When Trump reached out to world leaders to ask him clear the Strait of Hormuz, he got rebuffed. The Germans weren't interested. South Korea wasn't interested. The European Union overall wasn't interested. They basically told Trump, you did this without any, international consultation or approval. And so handling the fallout of it is on you as well. Trump is kind of left standing there, told that if he's going to clear the Strait of Hormuz and get the world's oil markets back in order, he's got to do that all by himself at his own expense. The world community is not going to help him. I see this entire operation as falling apart. I mean, when you have high-level officials within the Trump administration resigning in protest, when you have the world opposing it, and it all looks like the Trump administration is very, very isolated. 4 to 6 weeks, but who knows? What is the goal? Are they actually trying to overthrow the Islamic Republic? Because that would require ground forces, that would require a full-on invasion, and that would be very, very unlikely. They seem to have a huge base of support on the ground. Is the goal to just weaken Iran's military capabilities? I mean, it's looking like they don't exactly know what the goal is at all. And this was a war of choice, as many people are pointing out. There was nothing that provoked this action. Iran has, made huge concessions, giving up its peaceful nuclear energy program. Trump claimed last year when he bombed Iran during the 12-day war that he destroyed all of Iran's nuclear capabilities. The idea that Iran was trying to get an atomic bomb and that's what caused this, there's just no credibility to that claim, as many independent analysts have looked into it. I mean, there was absolutely no change in Iran's peaceful nuclear energy program that prompted this. This was just kind of a war out of the blue. The world isn't buying it, and I think I see it not going well for the Trump administration.
So what would $200 billion supplemental military budget do? What kind of military operations or strategic goals would require funding on that scale? And how unusual is it for the Pentagon to request this level of emergency funding outside of regular defense budget? And where are the Democrats on this? There was some talk of war powers, but resolution, but the vote, they didn't get the vote. What are you seeing in terms of pushback? And I guess the last time we had these supplemental war budgets, we're talking about Iraq and Afghanistan.
Well, the Center for Strategic International Studies estimates this war is costing roughly $900 million every single day. So you do the math. I mean, just to keep those aircraft carriers functional in the region, just to keep the troops activated, just to pay for the missiles. We're apparently running out of the missiles. I mean, this is absolutely crazy. But we're running out of these missiles that we've been shooting at Iran. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy. And that, such a large amount of money, that's what it's going to cost. I mean, this is a very, very, very expensive war, which Congress, could have voted to stop. I mean, they didn't vote to authorize it, but then they could have voted for a resolution that would have given them the ability to tie Trump's hands, but they chose not to. Thomas Massie and others put that forward. We saw Ro Khanna and other Democrats supporting Thomas Massie on that move, but ultimately it didn't pass. But yes, if they're going to keep this war going, it's going to have to cost a huge amount of money to keep it going. The complicity of the Democrats is very obvious, and while they're talking against it because it's widely unpopular, you'll notice that when Trump gave his State of the Union, they refused to stand up and applaud for many, many things Trump said. But yet, when he was repeating the lies about Iran and threatening Iran, they were all standing up and applauding. And they pushed the vote that would have prevented Trump from attacking Iran. They pushed it to the following week because they knew the attack was coming, most likely from intelligence briefings. They knew it was coming, and they didn't want to vote to prevent it. If they had voted, the day before, that would have made it illegal for Trump to attack Iran. Thomas Massie's vote, if it had passed, would have done that. They pushed the vote until the following week. So the Democrats are fully complicit, and really they're on board with what Trump is doing because they're beholden to Israel as well. However, Trump is their political opponent. Trump is, they've been calling him a dictator, because they smell a whiff of illiberalism in his rhetoric and such. And because of that, they are opposing it publicly, but they're not taking meaningful action to oppose it. And yes, if you were to cut off the funding for this war, it would stop. You can't have a war like this that costs $900 million every day and not pay for it.
Right. What do you make of this, perceived disagreement over the South Pars gas field strike and what it might reveal about a fracturing of relations between the Trump administration and Israel in the war? Do you think that is the media being rather hopeful, or there is something to it?
Again, there are so many incidents where the Trump administration carries out this war in a way that on the surface almost seem like they're not serving the United States, like that strike on the elementary school and the killing of well over 100 elementary aged girls, and the policy of assassination where they started out by killing the Supreme Leader Khamenei on February 8th, and they've murdered Ali Larijani, an important leader of the Iranian National Security Council, and now the latest, they've killed a leader of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards. And you would think that all of this would be not strategic because it's creating a huge amount of resentment in Iran. It's creating kind of a rally around the flag effect for Iran. It's also, sending a message to the world: don't negotiate with America, because if you do, while you're negotiating with America, you'll get, stabbed in the back or shot. Or don't sign a nuclear deal, because when a new president gets in, they'll just rip it up. It's weakening the United States and their ability to, operate diplomatically. But on the other hand, though, they're creating kind of the regional chaos that Israel has long said would be in its interest. If you read what they call the Oded Yanan plan, the idea has been to keep that region fractured with Sunnis versus Shia, with different ethnic groups, Arabs versus Kurds and others, and just keep that region completely divided in tribal terms, so that Israel doesn't face a solid block of opposition, because there's just pretty solid opposition among the population of all the surrounding Muslim countries. Iran, which is a Persian country, the Arab states, you go down the line. There's just opposition to Israel in the Muslim world. But if they can keep the countries of that region from being unified in opposition to them, and they can create kind of chaos with different armed groups battling each other, with different factions, with regional conflicts, that would be a way that Israel could be secure. And so if you look at what the Trump administration is doing by assassinating high-level government officials, by like this talk of attacking a critical piece of infrastructure, a gas field, the results of this are going to be instability in the region, which has been Israel's stated goal, according to their own intelligence assessment, for quite some time. Right. And what about the Gulf allies who are reportedly urging Trump to restrain Netanyahu, like Saudi Arabia and UAE and Qatar, which of course took a hit this week from Iran? Where are their voices in all of this? What are you hearing? Well, so these countries host U.S. bases, and because they host U.S. bases, they have had targets on their soil, and they have had their civilians killed. Saudi citizens have been killed. Kuwaiti and Qatari citizens have been killed in this conflict already, and that they are at substantial risk because they do that. When, the USA attacks Iran, Iran is going to retaliate against U.S. military targets, and if you have those military targets in your country, you're going to be attacked. And Iran has announced a policy of no restraint at this point. They will just attack U.S. military hardware in the region as much as they feel they can. Strategically speaking, why should they show restraint at this point? There's been talk of Trump asking them for a ceasefire. Why would they give a ceasefire? You murdered their supreme leader. You continued to kill their top government officials. You blew up an elementary school and killed, well over 100 children. The relentless attacks on Iran are not stopping. Iran has to strike back with everything they've got the force of in order to maintain their credibility. Any government that faced this kind of vicious attack and humiliation would have to respond with very, very dramatic force and fury in order to make the point. in order to maintain any credibility as a state. I mean, the state is armed force. That's what a state really is it is an entity, an armed body of men. And if the state is not capable of retaliating when it faces these kinds of attacks, it loses credibility. So the Iranian state is going to retaliate. And these Gulf allies that host U.S. states are now not happy because at this point the retaliation is affecting them, and their death counts are not even being included when U.S. leaders make reports. They're not even acknowledging the civilians of these countries. It's almost as if we hear Israel often when they have killed civilians, they'll say, well, Hamas was using them as human shields. Well, it looks like the United States has been using the population of these countries as human shields, and they're bearing the cost of hosting U.S. bases, and the USA doesn't even really seem concerned about the fact that these regional countries that are, hosting their military bases are now facing a fallout, right? And the people of Bahrain, for example, have been in the streets. There's a Shia Muslim majority in Bahrain, but they have a king imposed on them by Saudi Arabia. They host U.S. bases, but the majority of the population are Shia Muslims who sympathize with Iran. And they've been out in the streets rebelling, and there's been quite a bit of unrest in Bahrain since this conflict began. And you have to wonder how long that imposed government, that king imposed on Bahrain by the United States, is going to remain in power when the population is in the streets against him, and Bahraini citizens are dying as a result of the conflict they don't support.
Just before we go onto Cuba, if this war continues to drive up global oil and gas prices, how much political pressure could Trump face domestically to push for a ceasefire or de-escalation?
Well, I mean, it looks like everyone in Trump's camp is starting to get cold feet. Like I said, there are many people in Trump's camp who say they support it, but are now saying, well, they don't want ground troops, no U.S. troops, and they don't want to approve this new funding package. Seems like cold feet are spreading through the Trump camp. And the fact that, like, Megyn Kelly and the statements that she is making, and various members of Congress that are saying, okay, we supported this, but, it's got to stop. We got to see an end game. I see cold feet spreading through the Trump camp. The Democratic camp, is officially against this, at least in words, and has been from the beginning. And they're looking to ride opposition to this for their own strategic ends. And that seems to be the case as well. They have their No Kings mobilizations coming up for the end of the month, and it looks like opposition to the war in Iran is going to be included in their No Kings mobilizations. And, they're seeing opposition to the war as a strategic gain for them because the public and the world is so opposed to this war, because Trump is doing it. They can talk against it, even though they could have stopped it and didn't, and they can gain from this. So, again, I see Trump as kind of, losing out here. I mean, he's just kind of losing his credibility as a president. If you listen to the statements of Joe Kent and others, it looks like, that Trump is, his coalition is falling apart, and there's already widespread opposition to him from the Democrats.
If we could turn now to Cuba, with this news that Russia oil shipments are on their way to give Cuba's immediate energy needs a solution, given that the supply, since the embargo and the sanctions made by the U.S., what do you make of that move on the part of Russia to do that?
Well, they're doing it because what the United States is doing to Cuba is basically a crime against humanity. They're using food as a weapon, which violates the international law, the UN Charter. You can't use food as a weapon. And by preventing Cuba from getting oil, they have got Cuba to the point that the electricity is off in much of the country. This is a humanitarian crisis, and Russia is obligated to help. Russia is an ally of Cuba. They're very close. And at this point, it seems pretty clear that the policies of the United States are designed to just foment as much suffering in Cuba as possible, preventing them from getting oil. If you're preventing a country from running its electrical grid because you're blocking them from getting access to oil, that's just sadistic, and it's going to cause a humanitarian crisis, and there is a humanitarian crisis. Diaz-Canal has called it out, and much of South America is looking on at this situation in dramatic opposition. The U.S. media narrative is, well, this is all just the Cuban government's fault. See, communism is bad, and it's like, well, you do realize that Cuba, in terms of access to health care and literacy. And I mean, they've done very, very dramatic things to improve the lives of their population. But then when you have the USA preventing the importation of energy and just fomenting a humanitarian crisis in the country, with Trump bragging that he may be the one to, quote unquote, take Cuba. I mean, this is just sadistic cruelty on a massive scale, and it doesn't really serve even a regime change. And I really doubt the Cuban people are going to rise up and overthrow the Communist Party to appease the United States in the face of this. The Cuban public is perceiving this as aggression, which it is.
The U.S. Southern Command says it's monitoring Russian naval activity near Cuba, but it is not preparing for intervention. How significant is? Do you think it's a little provocative on behalf of Russia to do this?
Well, I just don't think the United States is prepared with a full all-scale war going on in the Middle East to then turn around and have a battle with Russia over whether or not they can, bring energy and oil to a people on an island where there's a humanitarian crisis going on. And I think Trump administration is probably going to look the other way and just let this oil go through. But we shall see. I mean, that may not be what Marco Rubio wants to do, but I feel like the Trump administration is not ready to start a conflict with Russia. I mean, they've already got this conflict in Iran that is not going well for them, which is causing dramatic international fallout in the oil markets and other places. So we shall see. But Russian oil has been delivered since this conflict began, and I have a feeling that Russian oil will make its way to Cuba.
Just one last question. President Trump has said he's prepared to take Cuba by any means necessary, while the Cuban government insists on defending its sovereignty. How real is this risk of, a takeover by the U.S.?
I think this is just Trumpian rhetoric. This is just typical, dramatic podium pounding from Trump. One day he's going to overthrow the government. The next day he's going to make a really good deal with them that they're all going to love. And I think Trump's credibility as a president and as a negotiator is just shot. I mean, nobody wants to negotiate with Trump. No one's taking his words seriously. He's clearly not making the decisions. Somebody else is making the decisions, and whoever is making those decisions is very, very unpopular. So I don't take those words seriously, but they indicate that there is, at this point, any anti-war notion. I mean, Trump said, I'm going to end the wars. I will be the president to, there will be no new wars. And, Vance saying, vote for Trump if you don't want to draft and all of this. I mean, Trump has just completely betrayed his message of the campaign trail. And that's very, very apparent, not just to those who hate him, but to many of those who voted for him.
Caleb Maupin, we're going to have to leave it there. We've run out of time again. But thank you very much for joining us today and for your insights as always.
Sure thing. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was me with Rebecca Miles on WBAI New York City Radio. I was on there this afternoon, early afternoon, around 12:30, and tens of thousands of people at minimum heard me. Those interviews are very important. And I do them regularly. I mean, it's just part of what I do. And I enjoy the platform, and it shows why, what I do is important, so. All right. So we have 2 Buy Me a Coffees that have come in, and I will answer them both. I do want to mention this. So I wrote this book, Trotsky and the Neoconservatives. And of all the books that I've written, I will say this generated the most interest quickest, right? The Kamala Harris book blew up 4 years after I wrote it. And, the Green Book by Gaddafi just continues to sell. People just continue to buy my edition of Gaddafi's Green Book. But this book immediately generated interest. The audio book is now available here on the YouTube channel, so you can just listen to the whole thing for free if you want. It's doing very well. And to this day, I have never found any serious criticism of the book. I continue to get a number of people, Trotsky had nothing to do with neoconservatives. The people who became neoconservatives broke with Trotsky. None of them address anything I say in the book. I get all these people that are like, I like Trotsky, fuck you. That's all that they are capable of doing. And I read the criticisms that people make, and I say to them, like, you haven't responded to anything I'm saying, right? A lot of Trotskyist groups in Australia are seething about it. Great, good, they should, because it makes a lot of points, and they need to actually read it. And it's like every criticism, I have a load of people criticizing it, but their only criticism is, Trotsky was good. Well, that's not like, show me what I said that was not accurate. Show me a point, an argument that I make that it's not standard. And I'm not even saying, and then I spend there's an appendix in the book, my essay on Jerry Healy. I wrote an appendix praising a Trotskyist, right? On page 134, I have a whole appendix about how important and amazing a great Trotskyist who stood with Palestine was. It's particularly wild. I do also want to just mention this, right? I continue to come back to this because, whatever, but it's like, and eventually we're going to publish a small little book pamphlet about this, but I'm working with another CPI member on a book or pamphlet. But like yesterday, Mossad, right, which is Israeli intelligence, the Israeli army tried to kill an RT reporter yesterday. There was a targeted strike. It wasn't random. Steve Sweeney was doing his live in Lebanon, and he almost died. They shot him. They shot at him. It was a targeted strike. Just saying, folks, right? It's like, the people who continue to think that the campaign against me, the vicious personal campaign against me and against CPI is, oh, no, it's not. No. It's just Caleb's a big doofus. I read about it on the internet. He's a doofus. No, I have been targeted on a level that you couldn't even imagine, right? There was an article smearing me in Haaretz. There was a targeted internet campaign against me. There were people. I mean, I could start listing everything that's happened. But like, if you want just another nail in the coffin of how obvious it is that I'm the victim of a Mossad campaign, they tried to kill an RT reporter in Lebanon. Somebody who does the exact same job I do was in Lebanon, and they tried to kill him. His name is Stephen Sweeney, and he went to the hospital. He has recovered. I mean, he was injured, but he didn't die. But they tried, and it was not an accident. They saw him, they knew what he was doing, and they tried to murder him. It was a targeted strike. You can go and watch the interviews, you can watch video of it happening live. It was a targeted assassination. So the idea that, there's this personal defamation campaign against an RT reporter in America, who also is building an organization that's, trying to be anti-imperialist in America. Just saying, it's happening, folks. It's happening. And, and the fact that somebody who sounds like me was created, and that person was literally tweeted out by the Israeli government multiple times, and they even tweeted April Fool's jokes about them, and that person doesn't do any activism or organizing. He's just a big doofus on the internet, who's designed to take people away from seeing me and distract people from seeing me. That should tell you right there what's going on. If you choose not to believe it, that's on you. But no, Mossad is definitely out to get me, just like they are out to get Jerry Healy. And I will say the essay on Jerry Healy that's included in here, it's a standalone piece. I got a copy of it somewhere over there, but it's, my pamphlet in defense of Jerry Healy, and that goes to show you, I'm not a Trotskyist. I don't agree with Jerry Healy, but Jerry Healy was a great anti-imperialist, and they targeted him. I think I've got the Jerry Healy booklet here. Let me see where I've got it here. Do I have it here? Right. But, yeah. I wrote in defense of Jerry Healy about, this was a really, really important Palestine solidarity activist in Britain, and the way they went after him. And it's fascinating. And it's also a good case study in being an anti-imperialist. I mean, Jerry Healy built an anti-imperialist movement that stood with Gaddafi's Libya and stood with Palestine in Britain when that was not a popular thing to do. And I would just encourage you to read this. It's a standalone piece. I included our piece on Libya as well. This is a good little pamphlet we put out, and I hope that you will read it, because it's an important story about how they go after people. And many people read it and they said, I know why you put this out, Caleb. This is a parallel to what you're trying to do in America, number one, and also how they've gone after you. And I said, yes, now. Right. That was on Hysteria. Right. There was some guy named Bob, Incredible Bob. He'd say, yes, now. Well, yes, now. That's true. Obviously, we're trying to do something different than what Jerry Healy did. One, we're not Trotskyists. Two, this is the age of, information technology and social media and all of that. But yes, he built an anti-imperialist, working class, populist movement. And yes, they targeted him in a similar manner. And, it's worth looking into. So I'd recommend that. Or you could just read, the essays in the Trotsky book. But, here it's a standalone piece with a lot more pictures. And I also included my essay about Libya and Gaddafi in here as well. So just wanted to mention that. All right. So we got 2 Buy Me a Coffees that have come in. So one of them is a more direct question. The second one, Hempcar, my friend, I really appreciate you. You are here night after night. You're a very loyal member of the audience. You're always saying great things in the chat, and I really appreciate it. But you often ask me, Hempcar, with all due respect, brother, you asked me to do stuff I can't do. The other night, you asked me to play a song. I didn't know that the song, I didn't know it, and I risked it, and then they banned the stream from Facebook because it was a copyrighted video. It was a copyrighted thing, And now you've sent me 2 Rumble videos. I don't know how to download Rumble videos. I can download YouTube videos. I can download Twitter videos. But you sent me 2 Rumble videos of yourself doing some anti-imperialist work on college campuses about Ukraine, and I'm really glad you did it. And I'd like to show it on there. And I encourage more people to do outreach on college campuses or anywhere else opposing war. But I can't download Rumble videos, dude. I can't. Brother, I really, really appreciate it. I really, really do. And you're here night after night, and you ask good questions, and you know a lot about the CIA, and you followed the Martin Luther King Jr. assassination and that whole thing. I mean, I really appreciate you, Jacob Hempcar. You're a beloved member of our community. I just wish you would send me stuff that I could show on here easily. And I just can't, I can't show Rumble videos because I don't know how to download them, man. So you're loved, and please don't take offense, and please don't feel like you wasted your money with Buy Me a Coffee, but I just can't, I cannot show Rumble videos. I can't download them, right? I can download YouTube videos. I can download Twitter videos. But I have no idea. And thank you for being understanding, Hempcar. I really appreciate you. Do not feel that you're not a beloved member of our community. Now, the next question, someone said, and this is okay. This is fine. I've been following you for a while. And while I agree with most everything you say, but I take slight exception with your ideas of degrowth. I do not advocate any degrowth or primitivism doctrine, but it seems to me that the world cannot consume at the same rate as the US, or we would destroy the environment. Are you not concerned about global warming and the degradation of our environment if we continue with our Western lifestyle? And my answer to that is I'm not. I am concerned about global warming. I think it seems to be a reality. And the fact that we've had such a crazy, it won't stop being, the erratic weather in New York City this year is particularly apparent. The reason that I am not saying that we have to stop consuming is because the whole history of humanity is reinventing the way we use resources. Right? Yes. If we consume in the same way that we are now until the end of time, and our population grows at the same rate, and we consume in the exact same way, yes, we will run out of resources. No question about it. The thing is, we won't, and we shouldn't, right? Fossil fuels needs to be overcome. We need fusion energy. We need to get to a higher energy source. If we were still burning wood to heat our homes, we would have deforested the planet a long time ago. But we don't. We don't burn wood to heat our homes. We heat our homes with natural gas. We heat our homes with electrical heating. And that is a lot more sustainable than firewood. In Haiti, people still use firewood to heat their homes and to cook, and it's not good. And, China and other countries would like to work with Haiti to enter a higher level, a higher mode of existence. And yeah, if we were to just do fossil fuels until the end of time, we would run out. It wouldn't be sustainable. I agree with you, but we need to go to a higher source. And the idea that we're going to solve any environmental problem or whatever by just having less, that's just not how humanity works. And that's called Malthusianism. And that they are using climate hysteria and climate fears to push Malthusianism, right? For example, we grow enough food already for the bulk of humanity. And the problem is not that we don't have enough food, it's the problem of distribution. And right now, the governments of the world are actively trying to foment food scarcity. And if you look at what they did to Sri Lanka, where the U.S. government it was, I believe, it was BlackRock, pushed them to go organic and destroyed their crop output. The Biden administration's policies, along with BlackRock, they're trying to reduce the amount of food in the world. It's absolutely insane. And you know what they're doing to the farmers in Europe. The reason those farmers were protesting is they were creating policies designed to reduce global crop outputs, degrowth, right? Degrowth is not the answer. Degrowth is a way to try and save capitalism. It's called Malthusianism, and Karl Marx spent quite a bit of time writing about it. You should read what he wrote about it in Theories of Surplus Value. You cannot have less, right? And the only way that we can get to a world that's, a world of equality is if we create a world based on abundance, right? We need a world where there's so much wealth that everyone has what they need, right? There is no limited resources. The world is full of resources. And on top of that, we can change how we use our resources, right? And we can go to other planets and we can create energy and seize it in different ways. And that this myth that, there's only so much in the world, that is the basis of a lot of the evil that we see. If the pie can ever only be this big, the only way you can get more is cutting into someone else's slice. And no one ever thinks their slice is too big and wants someone to cut into their slice, right? And, there is no limit to human growth and creativity. Human beings are amazing. We've gone from hunter-gatherers to space travel and iPhones, and that people who tell you there's too much, there's growth is somehow bad, we got to stop growing. They're trying to kill you, right? That is pessimism. And that is anti-human thinking. And, they push it. It is the official religion of the world right now. They are pushing it on us harder than you would ever believe. There's too much. There's too many people in the world. They believe it because that's the only way they can stay at the top. That's the only way Wall Street and London are going to stay at the top, is if humanity just stops growing. Well, humanity's going to keep growing because that's the way it works. If you had a child and you said to them, don't grow, don't get taller. Well, if they were eating properly and all that, they're just going to keep getting taller. It's like you can't tell humanity not to grow, but this is what their system mandates for its own ends. And this is again what has always happened. And I would urge you to go read R. Palm Dutt's great book, Fascism and Social Revolution, about the basis of fascism as an economic system. Fascism is basically degrowth, and that capitalism cannot grow for prolonged periods because of the tendency of the falling rate of profit and the problem of overproduction. And we need a centrally planned economy to make sure that growth proceeds. And the reason that we are innovationists, is because if you talk about communism, it immediately turns into a conversation about equality. People think communism is about making everyone equal. And Marx himself said the only way that everyone can be equal is if there's vast abundance for all. But unfortunately, any talk of socialism or communism inevitably turns into an argument about how to make everyone equal. And that's not the argument we need to have. We need to talk about having a pro-growth state, a state that rationally organizes the economy to unleash growth. That's what we need to have. And so we have to talk about something different, right? And that's what China has. Everyone's not equal in China. There's billionaires in China. There's people that are just rising out of poverty in China, right? I mean, socialism in the 21st century and the 20th century was countries that were kept impoverished and prevented from growing by imperialism, fighting to break out of imperialism so they can have growth, right? So it's really about growth or degrowth, and growth is American, and growth is what it's all about. And growth is really the nature of humanity. Human beings are tool makers. Human beings are innovative, creative species that are able to reinvent their relationship with nature. So we're shifting the conversation, and we're making the conversation about moving toward a planned economy as a conversation. It's not about inequality and who has too much and who has too little, but instead making it a conversation about how we can have a pro-growth state and invest in humanity and celebrate human creativity, right? And in order to do that, we have to love humanity. We have to overcome the pessimism, right? The reason that we don't have a mass movement in this country is because there's a huge amount of pessimism, right? I mean, the reason we don't have a real anti-war movement right now is because the people that run the anti-war movement don't think they can win. And that's just the reality, right? The people that run the anti-war movement have given up on ever reaching the American people. It's just about making money and being the center of attention, right? That's all Brian Becker and Sarah Flounders care about, right? Well, we need to actually aim at reaching the anti-war majority and building a real movement. And it's not easy, but I think we can do it. I think we can do it. So anyway, I could talk more about all of that. But yeah, ultimately, growth is the nature of humanity. There is no limit to human growth and creativity. We need to ascend to a higher plane, and we need to grow in a sustainable and rational way. But there is no limit to human creativity and growth. And the pessimism is the mantra of the era. We live in a pessimistic era where the ruling classes know that their time is limited and know that they won't rule over the world if it continues to grow. And they are using the climate issue to push their own pessimistic Malthusian thinking, and we must reject that. We must reject it, and we must say, no, the problem is their system that is irrational, but there is no limit to human growth, right? There is no limit to human growth. The phrase abolish billionaires. It's not a good phrase. Not that the billionaires are good, right? The billionaires under our system got rich by making other people poor, right? But the problem isn't their wealth, it's how they got it. And I would like a world where everyone lives in absolute luxury. If I had lived in the 1400s or in the year 500 AD, when having a mirror was something only the rich people would have, I wouldn't have said abolish mirrors, because that's more than someone should have. I would have fought for a world where everyone could have a mirror, or we had a rationally organized economy where everyone could have the luxuries of a mirror, right? We're not against wealth. We're against a system where people are kept in poverty and people get rich by making other people poor. And we want to rationally organize the economy so that growth can be unlimited. And we've learned in the 21st century that markets play a role in that, right? Markets shouldn't be dominant, right? But markets play a role in that, right? That markets are there for luxury items, for things that make life fun, right? But markets and profits shouldn't be in command. You need an anti-imperialist state that is fighting against the imperialists, that is fighting against the big monopolies and advocates on behalf of the whole population to overall organize the economy. And on the margins of that state, you can then have a market, right? Whether it's cooperatives or businesses, private industries or whatever, right? You have a centrally planned economy, but in addition to that centrally planned economy, you have a prosperous state, right? And that's, okay, think about what you just said there. I don't think everyone should be a billionaire while some people are starving. Chase, if everyone was a billionaire, some people wouldn't be starving now, would they? Think about that. Think about what you just said. I don't think everyone should be a billionaire while some people are starving. If everyone was a billionaire, those people that are starving wouldn't be starving. They would be billionaires. Come on, man. Come on. Right? Come on, right? Like, come on, right? We got to get over this. This idea that wealth is bad. This idea that growth is bad. The idea that, that what it means to be a leftist is we all just, are primitive, which I know the person asking the question didn't say. That's just, we got to get past that. Growth is the nature of reality. Wow, somebody sent 5 coffees for your anti-war activities, said supporter. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And, that's one way to donate is through Buy Me a Coffee. You can also just go to the CPI website and go to, the donate button. And that money just goes straight to us, right? Buy me a coffee. There's the middleman, Buy Me a Coffee and all that. But thank you. Thank you for your support. And, we're just going to do the best we can with what we've got. I've been waking up a little stressed out and all of that. And I'm talking to different people about trying to figure things out, but we're going to figure it out. We're going to intervene very effectively in the coming week. We're going to do some important stuff. And, who knows? Maybe there's people now who are not sure what we're going to do. Maybe after we do it, if we pull it off effectively, maybe then you can send a contribution to offset the costs, right? It's not easy to do what we're planning to do, but it has to be done. It has to be done. It has to be done. Okay, you mistyped. I'm sorry, Chase, but that's the point, right? Is, I've had this argument, and what whenever I have the billionaires argument with anybody, they just don't listen to what I'm saying. right? And they just were like, oh, you're saying billionaires are good. It's like, that's not like, it's like, and they never, there's just a lot of not listening that goes on, right? Where people just don't listen to anything. And, one of the most annoying things about socialists, I'll just tell you, is that I have spent my whole life learning what socialism actually is, visiting socialist countries. And then I come back to America and I'm unlearning the stereotype, right? I was taught in elementary school, communists want everyone to be paid the same wage, no matter how hard they work. That's stupid, right? And I was taught, communists want everyone to be poor as long as they're poor and equal. And I heard all this crap my whole life. And I spent my whole life unlearning that and learning about socialism with Chinese characteristics and learning about the Sandinistas and all of this. And I come back and I've got an understanding of what socialism actually is, the central planning, the means of production, Deng Xiaoping theory. And I come back to the United States and I see a bunch of teenagers who are like, yeah, I do want to be poor. Wealth is like bad, man. Yeah, man. Why shouldn't everyone be equal? And I'm just like, God damn it. And it's like, I've spent all this time actually learning it and trying to explain to people that the anti-communist lies are not true. And I just see a bunch of people who just adopt the anti-communist lies to be edgy and make people mad. And it's just so childish and it's so frustrating. And that kind of bullshit is amplified on social media in such an obnoxious way. And it's just infuriating. And I mean, I have a pretty clear understanding. I will say this, right? And I was talking to, shout out to Jessica. She and I had a good chat today. And, I wrote this book, Mystical Stalinism, right? I wrote this book, and this book is really just about like the history of the Communist Party of the United States and how it related to, what was going on in the Soviet Union and who Stalin was and all of this. This book is just kind of just the tip of the iceberg when it really gets down to it. But this is such a hard thing for people to understand. Stalin is the cutting edge, right? And it's so much more than just Stalin correctly applied Marx and Lenin's ideas. Actually, I don't think he did. I think he changed a lot of what Marx and Lenin did, and he applied it differently than Marx or Lenin had. Stalin is so important. Stalin is so important. And what Stalin did with the 5-year economic plans, the movement that Stalin built around the world that was aligned with the Soviet Union, that fought for industrial unions, that fought against racism, that defeated Hitler. Stalin is so important. Stalin is essential. Right. And that there would be no bricks in this world if it wasn't for Stalin. And it's not, people say that if it wasn't for Lenin and the Bolshevik Revolution. Yeah, Lenin and the Bolshevik Revolution made the Soviet Union, but it was really Stalin's leadership that made the Soviet Union what it was. Right. I mean, and that the Bolsheviks came to power and weren't quite clear what they wanted to do afterwards. And after Lenin, as Lenin was getting old and dying, it was not getting old, as Lenin was dying, they did the new economic policy. They didn't even really know what to do with it. And Trotsky had his theory of permanent revolution, and Bukharin had his theory. And out of that, Stalin came in. And Stalin had a very different approach than most of the Bolsheviks did. And he was a mass organizer from a peasant village in Georgia who had gone to a seminary school. And Stalin is the one that built the Soviet Union into a superpower with the 5-year plans. And Stalin really changed the global communist movement to really be effective during the Great Depression. And that you have to understand Stalin. You have to understand Stalin and the contribution that Stalin made. Stalin is so much the cutting edge. Stalin is essential. And that even a lot of people who like Stalin, right, they take him at his word, right? A lot of people that defend Stalin, they just assume, oh, well, just Stalin was just the one, practicing Marxism, Leninism in a pure way. No, there was something else going on there, right? There was something else going on there. What Stalin was doing had a deeply spiritual quality to it. What Stalin was doing had never been done before in history. And a lot of what Stalin developed was not, you can't find it in the writings of Lenin. It was stuff he pioneered himself. Stalin is really, really important. And if you can understand the goodness of Stalin, right, beyond the caricature we're all given, you can understand how 1/5 of the planet was turned into a superpower. You can understand how a global movement was fomented that defeated Hitler. I mean, if you can understand who Stalin was and how he did what he did, you're getting at some really important truth that'll help you understand the world. And I try to do that on here. And it's funny because Stalin's long dead. The Soviet Union's long gone. It's never coming back. And I don't even advocate the Soviet economic model. But I'm telling you that Stalin created modern anti-imperialism. And anyone in the world who's fighting imperialism in our time is to some degree or other putting into practice what Stalin did. You know, Khomeini, staunch anti-communist, hated the Soviet Union, but he launched the construction jihad. And what was that? It was the 5-year plans, right? It was a lot like what Stalin did. You can go down the line. When I was in Venezuela, when I visited the collectivos and I talked to the people there, it's all about Stalin, folks. I'm just telling you, if you have to understand, if you can come to understand the good side of Stalin, what Stalin did right? There's pages and pages written about what Stalin did wrong. And a lot of it is, whether it's from an anti-communist perspective, they portray him as just the most evil human being who ever lived, and he killed people for dinner and all of that. Or, from like the Trotskyite perspective, he sold out the Chinese Revolution, and then he sold out Spain, and then he did this and that, but if you can get past all of that, and you can look at like, why was Stalin, as the leader of the Soviet Union, able to take an impoverished country and turn it into a superpower? Why is it that, if it wasn't for Stalin, there would never really have been a strong civil rights movement in America like we have? Why is it, if it wasn't for Stalin, we would never have had industrial unions? Why is it that Stalin was so essential in mobilizing the global battle against fascism? Why is it that when the Nazis would arrest underground resistance units in Germany, in Germany, they would line up underground resistance fighters, and before they were being executed, they would hold up their fists and shout Stalin, before they were being killed? Why is that? Why is it that, that in Korea, and in Japan, the Korean slaves would sabotage the shells, that were being sent to, the Japanese military hardware? I mean, I'm just telling you, even today, the Japanese Communist Party, which is pretty awful. I mean, it's pretty much a sellout. I mean, they've cut ties with China. They've cut ties with every socialist country. They're just a bunch of liberals at this point. But why is it that the Japanese Communist Party has hundreds of thousands of members and neighborhoods they control and all of that up to today? Why is that? Well, it's because when it was complete, when Stalin went to war with Japan, there were a very big number of people in the country who were either Korean slaves or Japanese people who were loyal to Stalin. Like, I'm telling you that what Stalin did it's something that it's had such a big impact on human history. And it's something that few people really have been able to grasp the importance of. And it's like such a dramatic thing. Stalin led the USSR from 1928 until his death in 1953. It's not a very long time, actually. Is that even 30 years? Somebody do the math for me. Not a very long time. But what Stalin was able to do during that time had such a dramatic impact. I mean, if you look at what China had its revolution as a result of being sponsored by the Soviet Union. I mean, there would be no Mao without Stalin, even though Stalin and Mao didn't agree with each other and fought with each other. Right? I'm just telling you, there's something there. And that, honestly, I mean, the lack of understanding and the desperation not to understand and look at what Stalin did is massive. Right? Go read Toward Soviet America by William Z. Foster. Right? That was a movement in America aligned with Stalin, and that's how they talked. Right? Go and read Toward Soviet America by William Z. Foster. Go and read Why Communism by Moishe Olgin. Yeah, I mean, I'm just telling you what Stalin did is such a big deal. And it is so little understood, especially in America, that you really need to look into it, because you won't understand anti-imperialism. You won't understand what's happening in the world today unless you can really wrap your mind around that, right? And, you know, nobody has any clue. People think the Soviet Union, they were all just starving and miserable the whole time, and then they got freedom in the 90s. Like, you know, people have no idea. Look at what Stalin did. Go and read Anna Louise Strong and her book, The Stalin Era. Go and read, her memoir, I Change Worlds. Go and read Edgar Snow. Go and read people who lived there and experienced it, right? Go and read what, W.E.B. Du Bois had to say about Stalin. Go and read what Sidney and Beatrice Webb had to say about Stalin. Stalin, there's something there, folks. There's something there. And on that note, I'm going to end tonight's stream. I thank you, everyone who's contributed. I will ask you one more time to go to the CPI website and hit donate. And just, if you can only send us $5, that's fine. But I would like to pull off what we're going to pull off in the coming days. I'd like to pull it off, and it's not going to be easy. But, if you can support us, that'd be great. So, all right, I'm going to put on the closing music now. Go to the CPI website, hit donate, and we're trying our best to build an anti-war movement. So, yeah. New upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.